She walked the same quiet street every morning, two little dogs trotting beside her, never saying a word to anyone. But today, everything changed. Halfway down the block, a neighbor froze. The dogs were pulling hard, dragging the girl toward the old abandoned gate she always avoided. And for the first time, she looked terrified. Her hands shook. Her eyes kept darting back at something no one else could see. People rushed closer, and that is when they realized this routine walk had never been normal at all. The girl had been hiding something far heavier than anyone imagined, and it was about to reveal itself. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. The moment the girl stumbled toward the abandoned gate, the air shifted. Her two small dogs strained against their leashes, nails scraping the pavement, as if something beyond that rusted fence was calling them with a force that made their bodies tremble. For a second she resisted, feet digging into the gravel, but the pull of the dogs was stronger than her fear. Across the street, a retired officer named Miller watched from his porch, eyes narrowing. He had seen her walk this route every day for months. Same careful pace, same steady cadence, same quiet presence. But he had never seen the dogs behave like this. Not once. A soft morning breeze carried the faint smell of soil and old wood from the abandoned property. The girl froze at the threshold, her breath quivering, her grip tightened. The pink backpack she always wore pressed awkwardly against her spine, as if something inside it shifted with her fear. Farther down the block, two patrol officers were already responding to a minor call. Their canine partner, a disciplined German shepherd named Rocco, was scanning the street with instinctive precision. Rocco halted mid-step. His ears rose, his muscles locked. Then he looked sharply toward the girl. Rocco sensed something before any human did. His breathing deepened, shoulders tightening under his vest. He leaned forward, scent catching in the air, and gave his handler a subtle warning shift, a quiet alert. Something was wrong. The girl was trembling now, small fingers curled around the leashes as if trying to pull the dogs back. Her dogs, usually gentle and calm, began pacing in frantic half circles, whining at the gate, tails low and rigid. They kept looking at her, then at the property, then back again. A pressure built in the air, like the stillness that arrives right before a storm. Rocco took a step toward the scene, then another. His handler noticed the change. The officers moved closer, caution rising with every footstep. As they approached, more eyes turned toward the girl. Neighbors paused in their routines. A woman watering her plants lowered the hose. A jogger slowed to a stop. Something about the way the dogs moved had triggered a silent alarm in everyone. The abandoned gate creaked open by a fraction, just enough for shadows to spill through. The girl stiffened. Her dogs lunged with sudden intensity, nearly yanking the leash from her hand. She let out a soft, broken gasp, then wrapped both arms around them as if trying to shield them instead of restrain them. Rocco caught the sound. His ears twitched. He pulled free from his handler's side with the same instinctive force he used when a missing child was trapped or when a buried threat was near. He crossed half the street in seconds, paws hitting pavement with sharp precision. The officers called after him, but Rocco was locked into purpose. This was not a random alert. This was something deeper, something layered, something connected to the fear pouring off the girl like heat. Rocco approached slowly, sensing the edges of tension the way only a trained K9 could. His breaths grew heavier as he neared the gate. The scent trail was not one thing. It was many. Soil, metal, animal fear, human stress, a faint trace of something chemical, something that did not belong in a quiet neighborhood. A subtle tremor worked through Rocco's flank. He lowered his head. Rocco stepped past the girl and placed himself between her and the abandoned property. His protective instinct was unmistakable. The girl watched him with wide, frightened eyes, clutching her chest as if her heartbeat was drifting too fast to control. The weight of the backpack dragged her posture into a slight lean, and something inside it thumped when she shifted. That thump did not sound like school books. The small dogs whimpered behind Rocco, bodies pressed close to the girl's legs. The little animals seemed torn between loyalty to her and fear of what lay ahead. Rocco inhaled again, and this time his body jolted with recognition. A scent he knew, a scent connected to previous reports in the area. Old complaints, strange disturbances, missing items, faint traces found but never explained. Something tied them all together. And now that same scent was coming from two places at once, from the abandoned property and from the girl's backpack. The officers reached the girl at last. Officer Lane lifted a hand urging calm. Rocco remained still as stone, blocking the open sliver of the gate with the full weight of his body. The girl sank to her knees, overwhelmed by pressure she could not contain. Her dogs curled at her sides, ears pressed flat. The backpack was now lying against the ground, its shape bulging oddly. One end rose and fell with a rhythm too deliberate to be the shifting of objects. Then the officers noticed something else. A faint scratching, soft, repetitive, coming from inside the bag. Rocco whipped his head toward it, muscles fired, his entire posture sharpened into a point. The girl squeezed her eyes shut as if bracing for something she had hoped would never be discovered. Her shoulders shook. Her dogs whined and pawed at her, sensing her collapse. Then her voice cracked in a whisper of breath, barely audible, but filled with a weight that pierced the morning air. A silent admission without words. Rocco moved closer, eyes locked on the backpack, every instinct screaming alert. The scratching grew more frantic. Then it stopped. Total silence. The girl lifted her trembling face. Tears slipped down. The officers exchanged a look of stunned confusion. Rocco made the next move. He pressed his nose against the bag, and the bag lifted as something inside pushed upward. The zipper shifted. Once. Then again. Whatever was inside the backpack was trying to get out. The zipper twitched again, slow and uneven, as if whatever lay beneath the fabric was fighting against its own exhaustion. The girl hunched over the backpack, arms wrapped around it with a protective desperation that did not match her small size. Her dogs crouched on either side, trembling, eyes darting from her to Rocco, and then toward the open crack in the abandoned gate. Rocco lowered his weight, shifting from defensive posture to investigative focus. His chest expanded with each controlled breath, nose pressed so close to the fabric that his whiskers brushed the edge of the zipper. A ripple shuddered through the bag, then a faint tap from within, not random, not panicked, more like a pattern, weak but intentional. The officers stood frozen, unsure if they were witnessing danger or something far more delicate. Rocco sensed no immediate aggression, but something about the scent pulsing from the backpack cut through him with a strange mix of urgency and empathy. His hind paws braced against the pavement. His tail lowered into a position of steady caution. The girl placed her forehead against the bag, shoulders shaking harder. Rocco shifted his gaze to her. Her fear was not fear of being caught. It was fear of losing whatever was inside. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, pressing his body between the girl and the abandoned gate once more. His instinct was to protect her first, then solve the mystery. Behind him, Officer Lane knelt, watching the backpack with hesitant scrutiny. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalk, giving every small movement an exaggerated weight. Leaves rustled overhead. A dog barked in the distance. The normal sounds of the neighborhood felt wrong now, too ordinary for the tension coiling beneath them. The backpack shifted again, this time with more force. A corner of the zipper began to glide open. The girl grabbed it with both hands, holding it shut. Her breath came in short bursts. Her dogs pressed against her as though trying to anchor her to the ground. All three seemed bonded by a shared dread. Rocco placed one paw forward and nudged her wrist gently. Her hands loosened, startled by his touch, and for a moment she let the zipper ease open by a centimeter. A tiny flash of movement flickered inside, soft, pale, fragile, like a feather or a thin limb nudging against confinement. Rocco inhaled again. This time the scent struck him with clarity. Small mammal, young, frantic heartbeat, but layered with something else. Something metallic, something like dried soil clinging to fur. Something that matched the faint traces from the abandoned gate. The officers caught the same faint sound Rocco had been tracking earlier. A whisper of movement behind the gate, a fast scurrying across wood, then silence. 2 places, same scent. Rocco lifted his head. His eyes snapped to the gate. Something inside the property was connected to whatever the girl was hiding. The girl clutched the backpack again, curling over it, as if shielding the fragile weight within from the world. Her dogs let out soft whines that trembled like thin glass. Rocco positioned himself between her and the unknown threat. His steady presence held the scene together. Then the bag moved violently. The zipper jumped. The officer stepped back in reflex. The girl let out a sound that was half plea, half heartbreak. Rocco moved first. He placed his paw firmly on the bag. The motion froze everything. The bag stilled. The girl looked up at Rocco, her face streaked with tears that caught the morning light. Whatever she had been hiding, she had not meant harm. Rocco sensed that in the tiny tremors of her hands and the quiet rise and fall of her breath. He eased off the backpack, giving her space. Then his attention snapped to the gate again. Something shuffled inside the property. Wood creaked, gravel shifted, a shadow passed behind the fractured slats of the fence. Rocco stepped forward, slow and deliberate, positioning himself halfway between the girl and the gate. His ears pinned forward, his tail lowered, his breath deepened. The officers followed his line of sight. For a moment nothing moved. Then a faint sound echoed from deeper within the abandoned yard. A soft, irregular raps, like an injured animal or something dragging itself. Rocco took another step closer to the gate. The girl instinctively reached out, fingers trembling as though she believed Rocco might vanish into the yard if she did not anchor him with that silent plea. Her dogs whined at her side, tails tucked under, bodies coiled in fear. The officers gestured for caution, but Rocco was not rushing. He was reading everything: the wind, the shadows, the tremors beneath the ground, the vibrations from behind the fence, and the weight of fear within the girl. The gate creaked again, this time wider. A thin line of darkness opened behind the rusted slats. Rocco inhaled the draft that flowed out, a deep scent of soil, decay, and something recently disturbed. Something small, something in distress, the same scent as the backpack. Rocco turned his head toward the girl. Her eyes widened, her breathing hitched. She knew. She knew what was behind that gate. The backpack jolted again, harder this time. A faint squeal escaped from inside. High-pitched, weak, but unmistakable. Rocco whipped back toward the bag, ears pricking. The girl let out a soft whimper and loosened her grip. Something inside the backpack pushed upward again, forcing the zipper open by another centimeter. A sliver of fur, a tiny paw, a trembling shape. The truth was pushing its way out. Rocco leaned closer. But before the backpack could open any further, a loud clatter erupted from behind the gate. A sharp, snapping crack, then a rapid scuffle across dry leaves. The girl screamed without sound, her mouth open in terror. Rocco launched forward. His body hit the gate with controlled force, enough to rattle the rusted frame but not break it. The fence shuddered. A shadow darted deeper into the yard. Officer Lane moved toward him, uncertain. Rocco held his ground, muscles rigid, eyes locked on whatever had just retreated into the darkness. Behind him, the backpack shook again, but this time the movement was weaker, slower, as if whatever was inside was losing strength. The girl collapsed to her knees, curling over it with shaking arms. Rocco turned slightly, torn between two threats: the immediate danger behind the gate and the fragile life inside the bag. Then a sound broke the moment, a single faint cry from the backpack, a cry that matched the sound echoing from inside the abandoned yard. Two identical cries, one from the backpack, one from the darkness. Something inside that yard was calling to what she had hidden. The two identical cries hung in the air like thin wires pulled tight. One from the backpack pressed against the girl's chest, the other drifting out from the abandoned yard, trembling through the cracks of the rotten gate. Rocco froze. His body held a tension so sharp it looked carved into him. He glanced at the girl. Her eyes were wide and glassy, overflowing with fear and something deeper, something like guilt, something she had carried for far too long. Her small dogs huddled against her, ears flat, sensing the danger and the pain tangled between the two cries. Rocco's ears shifted toward the gate again. The second cry repeated, a fragile echo that vibrated with distress. His body pivoted ever so slightly, instinct dragging him toward the sound, but then the backpack whimpered, a weak, fading answer. Rocco turned back. His tail dropped low. His chest expanded in a slow, controlled breath. His instincts pulled him in two opposite directions. Protect the vulnerable, confront the threat, reunite broken pieces, solve the pattern. The officers watched in strained silence, unsure of the right move. Their training said to check the yard, their instincts said to protect the girl first, but Rocco was the only one who understood the complex weave of scent, fear, and urgency, tying everything together. The girl cradled the backpack as if she feared it might vanish in her arms. The zipper twitched, then stilled. The faint rise and fall of tiny breathing pressed against the fabric. Rocco moved closer. His nose brushed the bag again. A quiet recognition flickered in his eyes. Then he looked at the gate. Something inside that yard had the same scent. He stepped toward it. Rocco inhaled sharply. Same scent, same creature, same distress. Officer Lane called for caution with a raised hand, but Rocco was not impulsive. He was calculating, reading, measuring the danger, and measuring the stakes. Something small, injured, alone, possibly trapped, and connected to the girl. The girl pulled the backpack tighter against her stomach as if trying to hide it from the world. Her hands trembled. Her breathing shuddered in small, broken gasps. Her two dogs circled her, unsure whether to guard her or comfort her. Rocco took a step back from the gate and tensed his hind legs. He glanced at the officers, then at the girl, then at the bag. Rocco took a step back from the gate and tensed his hind legs. He glanced at the officers, then at the girl, then at the bag. He understood that whatever lived inside the backpack did not belong hidden. It was struggling. It needed help. And whatever was calling from the yard needed it too. He returned to the girl slowly, lowering himself until his head was level with her knees. She looked at him as though she expected judgment. But Rocco offered something else. Stillness, safety, permission. The backpack trembled weakly again. Her fingers loosened around it. Rocco nudged the zipper. The girl flinched, but her grip slipped and the zipper slid open by a few inches. Enough to reveal a small patch of matted fur. Pale, dirty, terrified. A tiny head lifted, ears twitching in confusion. The creature let out the same weak cry. A baby fox, very young, too young to be alone. The girl broke. Tears streamed silently, falling onto the fox's fragile head. Her shoulder shook with the weight she had been carrying in secret for weeks, maybe months. Officer Lane exhaled slowly, realization dawning. This was the secret she had been hiding. Rescued wildlife, injured, orphaned, taken in quietly where no one could judge her, protected in silence because she trusted no one else to care. And because something in the abandoned property had driven these animals toward danger, Rocco positioned himself between the girl and the gate again, piecing the clues together the way only a K9 could. The fox in her arms, the cry inside the yard, the traces of disturbed soil, the reports in the area, something nesting, something predatory, something drawing small animals into the abandoned property. A threat. Rocco growled low. Not at the fox, not at the girl, at whatever waited beyond the fence. The officers advanced a few steps, eyes narrowing as they scanned the yawning darkness behind the gate. The weeds shuddered as something moved again. A deeper sound now. Not a small, frightened creature this time. Something heavier. A scrape. A drag. A slow, deliberate shift across the earth. The fox pup in the girl's arms tensed, pressing tighter into her shirt. The girl lifted the backpack to protect it again, but her movements were weak and unsteady. Her dogs whined louder, tails tucked. They sensed danger that could swallow them whole. Rocco's muscles tightened, his stance widened, his chest rose in a slow, controlled inhale. The creature stepped forward into the faint edge of light. A large adult fox, injured, limping, bones showing beneath patchy fur, hunger burning in its eyes, and desperation. Months of hunger, fear, survival. The abandoned property had become its territory, and it had pups to feed. The scent of its own offspring was drawing it closer. The girl gasped without sound. The fox pup cried again, this time louder, and the adult lurched toward the gate, driven by instinct and desperation. Rocco moved instantly. He blocked the opening with his full body, head lowered, eyes locked on the adult fox. His growl was low, steady, commanding. Not rage, control. He would not let it harm the girl, or the small pup, or the bystanders behind him. But the adult was starving. It began dragging itself toward the gate, jaws trembling, paws staggering across the broken soil. Officer Lane reached for backup, unsure of how dangerous the moment could become. The girl held the fox pup against her chest, tears slipping faster as if she understood that something was about to break open. Something long hidden, something that had been building for far too long. Rocco planted his paws and braced for a moment of impact. Then the gate burst fully open, rusted hinges snapping, and the injured adult fox lunged forward with a desperate, broken cry. Rocco launched toward it in a controlled arc of instinct and protection, and the two collided in the dirt as the girl screamed in silence and the fox pup wailed in her arms. Rocco hit the ground in a cloud of dust, his body braced with perfect training as he met the impact of the desperate adult fox. The creature was weak, driven by hunger and fear rather than aggression, but its momentum was enough to roll both animals across the dirt beside the fallen gate. The girl clutched the pup against her chest, frozen in terror as the scene unfolded. The adult fox scrambled to its paws, trembling with exhaustion. Its ribs showed through patchy fur. Its legs shook under the strain of surviving too long in an abandoned yard with no food, no shelter, and no help. The cries from the pup pierced the silence, and the adult responded with a low raft that blended fear, instinct, and recognition. Rocco steadied himself, paws pressed into the earth. He did not attack, he assessed. He measured the situation with the same precision he had used since the moment he sensed the girl from across the street. He saw an animal at its limit. He saw a pup desperate for its parent. He saw a girl torn between compassion and fear, and he saw a pattern connecting every clue laid before him. The scent he had first recognized across the street, the soil on the girl's backpack, the strange disturbances the officers had never been able to explain, the shadow he sensed long before the humans did, the twin cries, all threads of one truth. This was a fractured family struggling to survive. Rocco lowered his head and shifted his weight, signaling no threat. The adult fox hesitated, wobbling with each breath, then collapsed onto its side with a weak thud, unable to continue. The girl pressed a shaking hand to her mouth as her shoulders crumpled. Her small dogs circled her, their nervous whines softening as they realized the danger was fading. Officer Lane moved forward carefully, hands steady, eyes assessing the injured fox with the focus of someone trained to balance risk and compassion. But Rocco remained the anchor in the moment. His presence kept everyone calm. His instincts controlled the pace of action. The fox pup twitched in the girl's arms, tiny limbs stretching toward the injured adult. The connection between them was undeniable. Rocco stepped aside, clearing a safe space. The girl slowly lowered the pup to the ground. It staggered, sniffed the air, then toddled unsteadily toward the adult fox. The moment the pup touched its parent, the adult let out a faint sound, so fragile it almost vanished into the breeze. The girl collapsed onto her knees, sobbing softly without sound. The secret she had carried for so long was laid bare. The fear she had lived with every morning had unraveled into this single moment of fragile truth. But Rocco sensed something more. He turned toward the interior of the yard. The scent of disturbed earth was stronger there. Fresh, damp, recently dug. He stepped past the gate, paws pressing into cool soil. The officers followed at a distance, uneasy. Rocco guided them toward a small depression hidden behind overgrown weeds. A shallow burrow, freshly collapsed. Tracks leading in and out. Tiny paw prints, larger prints beside them. Signs of struggle, signs of exhaustion. The Fox family had been living here, barely surviving. The pup in the girl's arms was not the only one she had tried to help. There were faint traces of human handling, small footprints, soft impressions from where she had knelt before, bits of cloth, wrappings meant to act as makeshift bandages. She had been caring for them secretly because no one else had. Rocco nosed the collapsed burrow. Something glinted inside, a bit of broken wire, rusted metal, sharp edges, a hazard that had nearly trapped the adult fox. This was the danger that had been pulling the foxes into the yard, a snare, illegal, hidden, forgotten, and the girl had been trying to protect them without ever knowing how deep the problem ran. Rocco backed away and looked at the officers. They understood. This needed to be handled carefully. The girl watched everything, tears streaking her cheeks. She hugged her two small dogs, who leaned into her with soft, trembling loyalty. Paramedics for wildlife arrived within minutes after a call was made. They examined the adult fox with steady hands, stabilizing it with care. They lifted the fox pup gently and placed it beside its parent on a soft pad. The girl watched in silence as her secret world was uncovered piece by piece. Rocco sat beside her, leaning gently into her shoulder. She looked at him with a mixture of fear, relief, and gratitude that needed no words. Her tiny dogs pressed closer, trusting the big canine who had saved them all. As the rescuers prepared to transport the Fox family to a rehabilitation center, Officer Lane approached the girl. The officers knew she had tried to protect the animals. She had shown compassion where others might not have. She had carried a burden too heavy for her age, and she had done it quietly, afraid of what adults might do if they discovered her fragile mission. But Rocco had seen through her silence. He nudged her hand with his nose, a gentle reminder that she had not failed. She had kept a life alive long enough for help to arrive. The officers gathered the objects scattered near the collapsed burrow. They photographed the snare, documented the hazards, and marked the area for removal and investigation. Someone had placed it there long ago, someone who had never returned. Rocco guided them every step. The girl finally found the strength to stand. Her dogs flanked her, heads brushing her legs. She watched as the adult fox and pup were lifted into the rescue vehicle. The broken family was finally safe. When the officers returned to the station, they filed a full report. Rocco was credited for identifying the illegal snare, alerting to distressed wildlife, and protecting a child and vulnerable animal simultaneously. His report included multiple commendations from the wildlife team and detailed notes from Officer Lane. A week later, the department held a small community event. Rocco received official recognition for his actions, a special medal, a commendation for exceptional service, a recognition note placed into his permanent record. The girl and her family attended. She stood beside Rocco, her small dogs sitting obediently at her feet. The fox pup and its parent were recovering at a wildlife center, slowly regaining strength. Professionals would care for them now. The girl no longer carried that weight alone. When the officers announced Rocco's commendation, the crowd applauded warmly. But the girl stepped forward quietly and placed her hand on Rocco's shoulder. No words, just a silent acknowledgement, an unspoken truth. He had not only saved the foxes, he had saved her too. The moments settled around them like soft evening light. A bond formed through fear, compassion, and courage, a connection made in silence yet felt by everyone present. The story that began with a little girl walking her dogs every morning ended with a canine who saw past her secret and brought the hidden world into the light. Rocco stood tall, honored, trusted, and forever remembered as the one who protected every fragile life in that quiet neighborhood. Crazy how a simple morning walk can hide a story this deep, right? If you made it all the way here, you're exactly the kind of person I want sticking around. Because the next story drops soon and it hits even harder than this one. Don't miss it. Tap subscribe, hit like, and stay with us for the next reveal.